All right, what's up guys? So Nutrition 101, we're back. I did a video series like this last year. I just wanted to do a refresher. The hair is a little longer. I don't think I've had a haircut since those videos last year, so that's kind of cool. Same t-shirt I wore in those videos last year, but some more wisdom to share with you guys if I have any of that. Just from chasing my own goals over the last year and helping clients reach theirs. So part one, how to choose a goal. Like, none of this stuff matters if you don't know where you're trying to go. So we're gonna go over how to get clear on that, right? So let me change my slide, see if my plan is to use my phone for this. Boom, that was easy. Okay, cool. So there are three options when you start to look at the goals you can accomplish through nutrition, right? Only three. There are only three options. So number one, I hope you can see that. Like, I don't know if there's a little bit of glare. If you can't see it, this whole series is gonna suck. But just listen to me and imagine what that says if you cannot see it. So option number one is maintain, right? So you can maintain the amount of body fat percentage that you've got. You can maintain the amount of muscle that you've got. You can maintain your body weight, right? That's an option. Very good option, right? That's like the default. Like, when in doubt, go to maintenance, okay? Number two, you can gain muscle, right? So you can increase the amount of muscle mass, muscle tissue that you have on your skeleton, okay? Or you can lose fat. You can lose the amount of body fat that you have on your skeleton. So notice what's not on the list, okay? Toning, okay? That doesn't mean anything. So I'll cut you some slack, because like I used to say that, or like be like, I'm not trying to, like the old like overly used cliche girl phrase is like, I don't want to get too bulky, I'm just trying to tone, right? All that means when we talk about toning, that you cannot tone a muscle, right? You can either grow it or shrink it, lose it. So to tone, really what you want is to lose body fat, okay? You want to lose body fat so that you can see more of the muscle that you have. Girls that are worried about getting too bulky, like, it takes a lot of work, a lot of time in the gym, a lot of effort, getting really strong, eating like a lot of calories to build muscle. So I promise you're not going to get bulky from touching weights or eating protein. If you're trying to like look more toned, I guess you could use it that way. Really what you're trying to do is lose body fat so you can see more of your muscle. And a lot of times, like, you'll find after you lose the body fat, that's what was giving you that bulky effect that you didn't like. So that's number one. Maintaining. So this is where someone tries to like eat at maintenance calories or maintain their weight on the scale, and just like improve things, I guess, or like make muscle gains without changing their body weight. It can happen. It's just painstakingly slow. It's a slow process. Sometimes it can work for a beginner, like if they're in a caloric deficit so that they're losing body fat, and they're also getting stronger in the gym, like lifting hard for the first time. They might be gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time, and their body weight might stay the same, but that does not last long. Like, really, if you've been lifting for more than like a year, that's not a good way to pursue your goals, because you can get there faster through dedicated muscle gain and fat loss phases. So the next one is turning fat into muscle. That it doesn't work like that. Like, so your fat stores and muscle stores are two completely separate organs in your body. So as Dr. Mike Israetel from Renaissance Periodization would say, you can no more likely turn your fat into muscle than you can turn your liver into your kidneys, right? It just doesn't happen. So you can lose fat and gain muscle, but you cannot like turn one into the other, okay? And then last is like, I just want to eat better. Like, what does that even mean? So we all learned in school, set SMART goals. So I don't even know what the acronym is. Like, I'm sure I could think of it if I sat here and thought about it for a second, but I'm not gonna do that. But I think we all know it has to be, there's no Q in there, so quantifiable is not part of a SMART goal. It has to be measurable. So eat better, is that measurable? I think you need to go a little further. Like, you could say, I want to eat more vegetables, and then even then it's like, how much is more? So yeah, that's just like not a great goal. So yeah, those are your 3 options. Okay, so let's look at how to decide. And I'm already like 5 minutes into this video, so I need to speed up. So the deciding factors, and these are just a few of the big ones. So number 1, still hope you can see that. If not, I'm gonna be disappointed. Number 1 is to use the mirror, right? That's like my favorite way to do it. Not like it's like my personal favorite, but like I think it's the most effective way, right? So you look in the mirror and you say like, hey, I'd like to lose some body fat. I could afford to be a little bit leaner. Great, boom, you got your goal. You could look in the mirror and say, I want to put on a little bit more muscle, right? That's a great goal. Great. So then your goal is decided right there. If you look in the mirror and say like, man, I need to lose some fat and gain some muscle, that's great. Just split those up into 2 phases and don't try to do them both at the same time. I promise you, it is not the best use of your time. I personally have made this mistake very recently. You would think as a nutrition coach I would know better, but around like the early part of 2021, early part of this year, I was like, I want to maintain my body weight and just try to get like as big and lean as possible at this weight. It didn't work, right? And then I took, 6 weeks, only 6 weeks, dedicated fat loss phase, and saw like really good results in my opinion from like focusing on it. So pick a goal. So number 2 is your history. This one's huge, okay? If you have been trying to lose fat continuously for the last like 2 years, successfully or not, you need to switch out of that gear. You cannot be in a fat loss phase forever. You're gonna end up spinning your wheels. Even if you're successful and you've like dieted down and you're now eating like 500 calories a day to lose fat, eventually your body's really, really smart and it's gonna say, okay, we're not getting that much food. We gotta learn to survive on these 500 calories. And then even then fat loss stalls, and then where are you going from there, right? So if you've been trying to lose fat for a long time, maintenance or a muscle gain phase is a great idea. On the other side of that coin, if you've been gaining muscle for the last, these are just objective time periods I'm throwing out, but for like a year or something like that, odds are you've got a good amount of fat with that muscle. So a fat loss phase would be a great goal there. So, or if you've been maintaining for a long time, which is ideal when you're approaching like trying to make change and select a goal, you can go either way. So history comes into play. Performance goals, right? So if strength and like, especially if you're like in a sport in season, like if you're a football player and you're any football player except like a kicker maybe, but even still the kicker like needs to maintain his strength and stuff. When you go into a fat loss phase, you are in an energy deficit, so you just don't have as much energy, and your strength is also going to take a hit. So if you're like an athlete in season, fat loss is probably not a great goal in season, okay? If you're a power lifter, obviously don't do that in season because it's gonna your strength is gonna take a hit. That being said, I would say the other side of that coin, if you're like the first thing that came to mind was like a cheerleader, like a flyer. If you're a flyer, I would not go into a heavy massing, bulking phase during season. The people who have to fly you are not going to appreciate that when you're coming in like, a pound heavier every single week. So I would say like that's kind of common sense. Just have a feel for like where you are currently and how all of your goals like align together. Don't pick a goal that is in direct contrast to some of your other goals. So we'll talk about the pros and cons of each in a slide to come. Next is time of year. Cutting during Thanksgiving and Christmas, anytime in Q4. I had to throw that Q4 in there because I think it's really cool when people talk about like the time of year in quarters, like makes you sound really professional, like a businessman or something of that sort. So if you're, if it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, like try to line up to where you're not having to do a fat loss phase at that time of the year. Summer is a great time for a fat loss phase because it's kind of like incentivizing to get leaner when you have to like be in settings where you have to take your shirt off, if you're a guy or a girl. And then like, yeah, the winter's a great time to be in a caloric surplus. Great time to try to put on muscle, because there's usually like a lot of food and you're not moving around that much. And then preference, I don't have to explain that, whatever you prefer. Okay, next slide. So let's look at maintaining and the pros and cons of that. Man, that glare is just like right on my words. Maybe that'll be better. I think that already looks better. So hopefully you can read that better. So the pros of maintaining, it's what your body wants. So like, even in my own mind when I say that, I'm like, yeah, who cares? Who cares about that? But that's super important, right? Like your body wants to stay the same weight. It wants to chill. It like craves what's called homeostasis, which is, you're not gaining, you're not losing weight. When your body is maintaining, it's like, whew, we're good, right? We can survive like this. Like this is what I want. So that's one point. It's really easy, right? Like once you get settled in, like, so it's not really easy when you're coming straight off of a fat loss phase, because what your body wants to do is return right back to that weight that you started your fat loss phase at. So it's a little tough in the beginning coming off of a phase, but after a while, it's like, that becomes your new maintenance. So it's kind of hard to like set that new maintenance, but once you've got it set, like if you have a day like Thanksgiving or something like that, and you haven't like just lost a lot of fat leading up to that, you're pretty stuffed and you're naturally going to eat less like in the days after Thanksgiving. The opposite is true if you like have, been in a fat loss phase leading all the way up until Thanksgiving. You can eat a lot on that day and still be hungry the next day. I've experienced this. I'm sure many of you guys have experienced this. Because your body wants to gain weight. But when you've been maintaining all year, you hit Thanksgiving, you eat a ton, naturally you're just kind of like, and you don't eat that much the next day. So that's the great thing about maintaining. When in doubt, maintain, okay? You don't want to be in a fat loss phase forever. You don't want to be in a muscle gain phase forever. Like those are the ones where they're deviating from your set point. When in doubt, just like stick to the calories you're at. If you're maintaining your body weight, you are doing great. You're doing a great job, because if you do that for longer, it makes it really easy to chase a muscle gain or a fat loss goal, because you know where you're at, and you're not like always swinging back and forth between goals, okay? The cons, slow changes if at all. So when you're maintaining your body weight, you step on the scale every single day if you weigh daily. And then like it's the same number for a long time, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, am I jacked yet? And it's like nothing's gonna change. Like significant change comes with change on the scale. You can at me on that. I don't care who you are, that's a fact, okay? Unless you're a beginner, like I said, like if you're a beginner, the scale can stay the same, and you can be gaining muscle and losing fat. But after a while, and if you want like significant change, like change that in my opinion is the most efficient, the scale is going to be changing during that time. So that's the first con. And then it's kind of boring. Like you're not improving, you're not getting worse. It's good, but it's like not that much to look forward to when you're maintaining, okay? And that's like a big point with all this is like, the fun is never in reaching the goal, it's in like chasing towards the goal. So don't always be like trying to rush the process, okay? That's it for that slide. Next slide. Pros and cons of muscle gain. So the pros, you're gonna increase your strength, right? Anytime your muscle sizes are increasing, your strength is probably gonna go along with that. You're gonna have more energy, right? So yeah, you're eating more than your body requires to maintain your weight, so you're not gonna be in an energy deficit. More calories to play with, so you've got more room to fit in ice cream on the weekends or the weekdays or every day. You can like afford to be a little looser with your tracking because you're trying to gain weight, right? Cons, fat gain. So the more you get away from being a beginner, anytime you want muscle gain, which requires a caloric surplus, you're going to be gaining a little bit of fat along with that, right? So unless, like I've said this a million times, unless you're a beginner, you're probably not going to be gaining muscle and losing fat. So when you start a muscle gain phase, that's probably the leanest you're going to be until you finish that phase and then do another cutting phase if that's what you decide to do. So that's the first con. Number two is consistent training. This can be a pro or con depending on like whether you look forward to going to the gym or it's like a struggle for you. I mean, it should be a struggle for everyone because you're like challenging yourself, but whether or not you enjoy that, you know, you get what I'm saying? Excuse me, I didn't like enunciate that burp. You're welcome. Number three, it still requires willpower, right? So unlike maintenance, like you're still creating change in your body. So like you still have to have the willpower to, it's like, you know, when you're in a fat loss phase, it takes willpower to like not eat, right? Sometimes when you're in a muscle gain phase, especially like deep into it, you gotta eat when you don't feel like it. So it still requires willpower. So, and some of you guys who are like in a fat loss phase, like I just got out of, like if I would have watched this when I was in my fat loss phase, I'd be saying like, there's no such thing as like willpower to eat. Like I can eat anything and everything right now. So anyways, fat loss, pros, improved health, okay? So if you're above a certain body fat percentage, right, you get to a point where it's like the number one priority, the number one thing you can do to improve all your health markers across the board is to lose body fat, right? It almost always improves your health markers to get leaner, okay? So that's number one. Number two, usually improved appearance. Like there's a reason that whether or not you think they look good, but like bodybuilders, there's a reason they need to be extremely lean when they get on stage. There's a reason like most models are pretty lean. Now I know that's a touchy subject these days. Yeah, I'm just gonna move on. So number three, improved athletic performance depending on your sport. If you're that flyer that we use for the example, you're probably gonna be better at your sport if you lose body fat, okay? If you're a sprinter, for sure. If you're a basketball player, maybe you can jump higher, stuff like that. Cons, so you're gonna have decreased energy, right? So you're in a caloric deficit, aka energy deficit. You might like move slower, not feel like doing more and more stuff. Like this one can get extreme, like the further you get into a cut. But an example I've heard is like somebody like, you know, you're in a deficit and you think of a funny joke, but you just like don't say it because it takes energy. So you just like kind of laugh to yourself, but you don't like express the joke because it's not absolutely necessary to your survival. That kind of stuff happens deep into a fat loss phase. Number two is increased hunger. Obviously, you know, you're losing body fat, you're not eating as much as your body's asking you to eat, you're gonna get kind of hungry. Number three is decreased strength. So anytime you're in a fat loss phase, you're in a caloric deficit, your strength it's gonna take a toll on your strength. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Like maintaining strength during a fat loss phase is a win. Like that's a huge win, right? Let me see if I have any more slides. Yeah. Oh, this one's huge. So before I move on, let me just go back. I'm completely joking about this one and the models. Like it's already kind of weigh in on my conscious. Obviously, like, that's a whole subject, but even like, male and female models, like, it just depends on the role, I suppose. It's a whole different story if you're under the belief that you do not have any say in how much body fat you have or don't have. I am under the belief that you do have a say in that, but I can absolutely see someone coming from the perspective of like trying to lose body fat but going about it in the wrong ways and being extremely frustrated that they can't. Like, I've been there, right? So I tried like the low carb, like keto, the fads and all that kind of stuff. It works for a little while, but like I was never able to see sustainable change until I started looking at calories, macros, energy balance. So if you're like, you don't love your appearance and you feel like it's out of your control, I can see where that's a touchy subject. But I'm here to tell you that, like, I feel like I just got really preachy, but it's good news, right? Like, I'm here to tell you that you are in control of that, like, if you want to be. So that's that. Let me get as far away from that topic as I can. So, phase length considerations. Why is this, for some reason, just this slide messes up. So, you can do maintenance forever, muscle gain, 2 to 6 months, right? Anything less than 2 months, it's like, did you even really make any change? Like, you probably need to, like, I am guilty of this myself, going into like a muscle gain phase for like 2 weeks and then seeing a little bit of body fat, freaking out, and then going right back into a cut. Like, you didn't make enough change for it even to be considered a muscle gain phase. So this is super important, this slide. Like, I don't want to glaze over this because, like, once you pick on a goal, you need to be all in for that for a certain amount of time, or else it's not going to do any good. You might as well do maintenance, okay? So like, when you're going to pick one of these goals, like, that's why I put this slide in here. You need to be dedicated for a minimum of amount of time. So if you're like going on a cruise in a month or 3 weeks or something like that, and you're like, man, I'm gonna go into a massing phase, right? I'm gonna go into a muscle gain phase. And then like, the cruise is, you're about to like leave the next day and you're like, man, I want to be shredded for this cruise. And then you're like, forget the muscle gain phase, I'm going to a deficit. You're just going to spin your wheels and go back and forth between these two, never make any significant change on either front. So like, consider these things when you're deciding on your goal. Muscle gain, 2 to 6 months, fat loss, 4 to 12 weeks, right? There are things called mini cuts, which are less than 4 weeks. A lot of times the goal of a mini cut is to get you hungrier so that you can rebound back into and better execute your muscle gain phase. Like, mini cuts are for people that want to go into an extreme deficit so that they can increase their appetite and continue to gain weight. So mini cuts are anything less than 4 weeks is a terrible idea for someone whose goal is sustained fat loss, right? So 4 to 12 weeks. Anything longer than 12 weeks, you really need to be experienced with things like refeed days, periods of like, a week, a month, something like that of maintenance calories. It becomes a little bit more tricky once you get past 12 weeks. So like a solid fat loss phase is anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks. So that is it for part 1 of how to decide on a goal. So yeah, I mean, keep all those things in mind when you're deciding on your goal. Reach out to me personally if you have any questions based on that video. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to set your calorie target once you've decided on your goal. So I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.